Wild Hog Scooters.
Hi, I'm JJ from Wild Hog Scooters. I'm just going to go over basic scooter parts and what you're looking at on your 50 and 150cc Chinese scooter. So there's many different types of these, but they all generally look very similar. This is going to be the ignition for your scooter. You put the key in, turn it on, that's what gives you power and lets you start the bike. They all plug in with a very similar plug. Some are more simple, some are a little more fancy, but they all do the same thing. They turn the power on to your scooter, allows you to start the bike. These are fairly easy to change. You can do it yourself, but it does take a little bit of time. Just very minimal tools to be able to change it. You can get them here at Wild Hogs. We usually charge about a half-hour labor to install it, about $30, $35 for us to put it in your bike. The next part, this is going to be a 50cc starter. A 150cc starter looks identical, just a little bit bigger. They both bolt on with 2 bolts here. You have your power wire that connects here, and this is what's going to start the bike. This is going to be a 50cc starter Bendix. Only 50cc's will have one of these. A 150cc has a starter clutch that's inside the motor. That's something that you would have to have a lot of mechanical knowledge to be able to change, but the 50cc Bendixes do go bad from time to time and are pretty easy to change. They're going to be underneath the belt cover on the side of the bike, and this is what gives power to the bike to be able to crank over the engine. It's a pretty simple part. Also, with the Bendix, you have your variator and clutch, and these are connected with a belt. The variator is a little bit more complex. It opens and has your roller weights. You can change out the weight of them to have more low-end power or more top-end speed depending on what you're looking for. They all have a slide, weights, and then you got your cover. So to change them out, you got to remove the belt, remove the clutch, and then the whole variator will slide right off, so you can change out the weights or service it or replace it. So the weights just slide in. Also, if you're replacing your belt, you'll always have to reset the variator weights and check them, because they will always come out of place when the belt breaks. And then the clutch, it's a centrifugal clutch, so as the RPMs of the engine go up, the pads will come out and catch on the bell, which allows the back tire to move. The belt's going to ride in the pulley in the center, just like that. You have to depress the clutch when you replace it to put the belt inside the pulley. Next is some electrical components. This is going to be your coil. It's connected with 2 wires and bolts to the frame. Most of the time, if your bike is not starting and you have no spark, this is the issue. This is what gives power to the spark plug and allows the bike to start. If you change the coil and you still have no spark, it could be the CDI. This is like basically the computer to the bike. It controls the RPMs and how high they can go. There's performance ones that remove the rev limiter, but this is just a stock one here. So if there's no spark, it's most likely one of these 2 here. That's the issue. Something that a lot of people think is causing their bike not to start is the voltage regulator. This is in charge of charging your battery. It won't cause the bike not to start. It lowers the voltage from the stator down to the correct voltage to keep the battery charged. The stator is what produces the electricity to charge the battery and also time the spark and provide power to the bike. So this is a very important piece as well. This will be under the flywheel, and you'd have to have special tools to be able to remove it and to replace it yourself. At Wild Hogs, we do them all the time. It's usually an hour labor or less to get one changed if it ends up being bad. So without this part, the bike will not run. Next is the starter solenoid. A lot of times these go bad. People think that their starter's bad, but it ends up being most of the time just the starter solenoid. You can test it by just touching a screwdriver across the top of the connections here, and if the bike tries to start, then this is going to be bad. It could be a switch or some other things, but most of the time these go bad as well. Very easy to change, couple of bolts, just plugs right into the wiring harness. This is the fuel petcock. A lot of people think this is a fuel pump. This is actually a shutoff valve. It does not pump fuel, it stops the fuel. So if the bike is not running, it shuts the flow of the fuel off to the carburetor. So it's not going to pull fuel out of the tank, it's just a gravity-fed system. So this little valve here, you just connect to vacuum, and it lets fuel flow across the diaphragm inside the petcock. These do go bad quite a bit because the ethanol makes the diaphragms and the parts inside go bad. So if the bike's been sitting, you most likely will have to replace the petcock. Next, if your bike is real loud, making a loud exhaust noise, most of the time you need to change out your exhaust gasket because your exhaust nuts vibrated loose off the head. These are very, very inexpensive. They vibrate loose if you don't check them every once in a while, and allows the gasket to come out. You just put a new gasket and bolt it back up tight, and that'll make your bike quiet and sound like new again. This is a funny looking part. It's just a horn. It's connected with 2 wires and bolts to the frame, so that's going to make all the noise when you hit the horn button. A lot of times they'll not honk, and you just tap the inside, and they just need freed up, or you can adjust the screw on the back and they'll start working. So most of the time you can fix them without having to replace them. They just get stuck from sitting over time. This is another part that doesn't have anything to do with the bike starting, but a lot of people come in and think it's the reason why the bike won't turn on. This just controls the blinkers. It's what makes them flash, turn on and off. That's all this part does. Even if you didn't have it, the bike would still run. It's just your turn signals when it flash. So it's very simple. It just plugs in, has a little rubber hook that just gets hooked right to the side of the headlights. This is a fuel filter. They're very small but very important. Without one of these, you'll have a lot of issues with your carburetor getting clogged, different crud getting in your jets and causing the bike not to run. You should change these out, every 2,000 to 3,000 miles, and it'll help your bike run and not have any issues. So it's a very, very cheap part. Has a lot to do with the fuel and how the bike's going to run. This as well, this is your fuel float. It's on the top of the gas tank, and this part goes inside the gas tank and floats up and down with the level of the gas. It just plugs in and goes to the dash to tell what your fuel reading is going to be. Very simple part. The bike does not need this to run. It can be unplugged and the bike will still start. It's just going to tell you how much gas is in the tank. And then most bikes have only one of these. This is a master cylinder for a 50cc bike. The 150s look very similar, and this is most of the time going to be your front brake control. Some bikes have them on the rear side as well, and it would look the same, just reversed for the other side. You put fluid in it. You never have to service it. There's a little window here that can tell you your level in case you have a leak, so you know if you're getting low. But for the most part, it's a non-serviceable part. If the seals go bad or if it stops working, you can replace it. Sometimes you can get them to work by bleeding them and getting the air bubbles out. But for the most part, they're pretty simple. Don't ever have to mess with them. All the parts here that you saw, we sell here at Wild Hogs. We also install them if you're not comfortable installing them yourself. These are just the basic parts, so if you open your seat bucket of your scooter and you're not sure what something is, these are all common things. Almost all scooters have them. There's different variations and different similarities, but for the most part, these are the basics every scooter needs to run and drive. Thanks for watching. Give us a call if you have any questions.